Good afternoon. It is my greatest honor to stand before you today and talk to you, fully engage with you on this important day, the birthday of our icon, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, his clan name Madiba. We celebrate this day in his honor, but in his honor, it is not Mandela only. In his honor, we have to celebrate all our freedom fighters throughout the length and breadth of our beautiful continent, Africa. In his honor, we have to remember our own liberator here in the Republic of South Sudan, Dr. John Garang. In his honor, as the young people of South Sudan, we have to tell ourselves that our heroes and heroines who fought for us to be free started fighting for us to be free at your age. In his honor, we have to resolve among ourselves as young South Sudanese that in honor of Mandela, Dr. John Garang, many of our forefathers who fought for us, if we had dropped the baton as young people, in his honor, we have to take the baton and say, as young people of South Sudan, this country is in your hands. It is not in anybody's hand. Our freedom fighters like Mandela, Dr. John Garang, many others, Kwame Nkrumah, where they are looking at, I wouldn't say at us, because I'm also, a senior citizen. But they're looking at you, turning in their graves and asking themselves, why are the young people of our beautiful continent, Africa, not so keen to take forward the struggle for democracy that they fought for so long? The young medical student who spoke here, quoted Mandela as having said, for freedom, for democracy, if he had to die, he would die fighting for those things. That's a strong message which you quoted from my young kid. It's the message which talks to you. It talks to you now more than ever before, because Mandela was a youth activist. Mandela was a sports person. He was a boxer. Mandela was a university student. Mandela was an attorney. Mandela was our commander, chief commander of our liberation movement, Umkhonto Wesizwe, in South Africa. Mandela was a trained guerrilla. Mandela didn't want to wait and say, I am going to focus and concentrate on my studies as a young person at the expense of not fighting alongside studying for my people who in South Africa the apartheid government had oppressed for over 300 years. That's Madiba. Our freedom fighter here, Dr. John Garang, is a doctor because alongside fighting for us to be free, he valued schooling. It is therefore incumbent upon us as young people to resolve within ourselves that we as young people of South Sudan, like Madiba, who at least went all the way to the finishing line. He didn't fall by the wayside. He fought up until the finishing line. And what was the finishing line? The finishing line for Madiba was in 1994, when on behalf of oppressed South Africans, black South Africans, and Africans in particular, he cast the first democratic vote in South Africa. His other comrades in South Africa and all over in our continent, Dr. John Garang included, fought for this country up until his last breath. I am not the one to lecture you on our hero, Dr. John Garang. I take it that you know that he died with his bootstraps on. It is something which you, as students, have to take upon yourselves to say the dream of Dr. John Garang, which he fought for, will only be achieved the day South Sudan people go to a vote and cast their democratic vote and feel that feeling of casting your democratic vote. I lived to the better part of my life under apartheid. We were not allowed to vote. White people only voted. They had their own democracy, which was oppressive to us. We fought for that right to vote, because with that right to vote, we were able to unlock all the other rights needed for all humankind to enjoy. Not that some humankind must enjoy better rights than others. I would imagine as students you must have all read a book called Animal Farm. Do you know about it? Yeah. You know, that book, I take it we are university students. When you read it at lower grades at school, you read about pigs and donkeys and animals there, all of them, you know. But as you go to university where you are taught how to analyze contextually, you realize that the book is about politics. The book is about those who are in power but wanting to oppress others. That's what Madiba and his ilk fought for. I am a lawyer by profession as well. My road to becoming a lawyer was not an easy one. It is a road which, as I rode on it, supreme in me at your age was that I've got to liberate South Africa. Message is, as young people, we are the liberators of our elderly people. Our elderly people have done their job, but we ourselves must ensure that we go to the finishing line. And the finishing line is December 2024. If there are things which are not going right in South Sudan, which may hinder you going to the finishing line in December 2024, it is today when you have to take a decision. We are going to take it upon ourselves to ensure that there is no extension. We want South Sudan to have a democratically elected government. This is the biggest dream Madiba wanted, was to free us and to make sure that as oppressed people in South Africa, we have the universal right guaranteed in the Bill of Rights to everybody, every human being, to vote, to have a democratic vote. South Sudan has been independent since 2011, as if all this period in between, there were conflicts, blood was shed here in South Sudan. Blood which ought not to have been shed after 2011, because so much blood was shed when our liberators were fighting against our oppressors at the time. After 2011 in South Sudan, there should have been peace. And that's what our leaders in South Sudan today are striving for. I watch all the time, and all the time I have the privilege of engaging with His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit. His quest for peace is unequaled at this point in time among our leaders we have in the continent. You all know when the unnecessary war, broke in Sudan He was the first president to raise his voice, to say, stop the war. We don't need this war. South Sudan is the only country in the world which, when its neighbors were in conflict with each other or at war with each other, because the people who suffer when people fight are vulnerable people. And I would imagine that as young people, you know who are vulnerable people. Vulnerable people are the aged, women, the youth, people with disabilities. Those are the most people who get affected. And when war breaks, what do? They all try to run away to neighboring countries to seek refuge. As war keeps on raging on in Sudan, people fleeing from that war in Sudan to other neighboring countries, they are subjected to all manner of requirements needed for them to be accepted as refugees in the neighboring countries. Egypt is one such example, where when you go in there as a refugee seeking refugee status, you have to produce documents to show that you have a passport or some such thing. How would you have a passport when your house where you used to live in has been razed down? I'm saying these things so that we should, as young people, appreciate the fact that your elders here are doing their bit, but you are the only ones who can also take these batons and say, like you, President Salva Kiir, who fought for us from a youthful age to date, we want to show you that we'll take South Sudan to the finishing line. That's us. And I'm saying this because as students, revolutions are basically waged by young people and students in particular at university. In my case, I was one of the leaders of Soweto 1976 student uprisings. I'm not sure if you know that. I've always engaged with her and said, in South Africa, June 16 is a public holiday because that's the day at your age at high school when we said enough was enough with the apartheid government as young kids at high school. And we took it upon ourselves to march in the streets of Soweto. What did our oppressors do? That time I was around 15, 16. I'm sure you must have all read about the youngest person who was shot on that day. He was 12 years old as a student. So the onus is on you, my kids and students at this university, to resolve, take a resolution and say, we are like Madiba, going to fasten our bootstraps and say, here we are not fighting for independence. We have independence, but we want a democratically elected government which the revitalized transitional government of national unity here in South Sudan is fighting for. The government we're having is determined to say to it that next year we go for a democratic election. You must be the messengers of this journey now, because this is your resource. South Sudan is your resource. South Sudan is a country full of opportunities which no other country in the world has. You look at your natural resources, you look at your human capital, you look at your Nile River. This is a river which we all studied. When I came here, the first thing I wanted to go and see was the Nile River, because I learned so much about this river. You are the only country where animals, wild and domesticated, outnumber the population. You are the only country where fruits hang all over around the shore. It's entirely up to you to make sure that you make use of this resource in honor of Nelson Mandela and others. The 67 years Mandela at the time, when it was universally accepted that 18 July 2023 must be a world holiday, public holiday. And I said it in the morning, and I always say it all the time, this time, because I address gatherings now and then, that it was Mandela who said, this day is not supposed to be a public holiday. It's supposed to be a working day, and not an ordinary working day where I put on my suit and I go to my office, or as a lawyer go to court and do my work. No. It's a working day where for 67 minutes, all of us, and he called all of us in the world, that do something to better the lives of those who are less fortunate. At the end of the day, you must say, today I did 67 minutes of helping the less fortunate. And the less fortunate are many. And the less fortunate are Black and Africans in particular throughout our continent. It was Mandela who, when we were in the process of negotiating for democracy, we, as the young guerrillas of that time, soldiers, led by Comrade Chris Hani, we were not so keen. We were prepared to die fighting because we wanted to finish the oppressors. And it was Mandela, as our commander-in-chief, who said, surrender all your AK-47s. And we did. We did. I carried an AK-47. We did. We listened to him. That's as far back as then. And the message there was, now it's no longer the time to let the guns roar. It's the time to silence the guns. And that is the message which is currently even the AU message to African countries, which is not completely or entirely hidden. It's only you, young people, who must carry that message now and say, we want guns silenced, not only in South Sudan, in Sudan, in Congo, and everywhere else in Africa, because Africa is your resource, not only South Sudan. With these few words, and at the risk of not really agreeing with the program director that because of the heat we are not supposed to have any ventilation. It's important to be ventilated because we run the risk of collapsing through heat. I hope we are still going to plant the tree because that's what Mandela would have loved. As I conclude, I want to conclude by wishing the basketball team of South Sudan, which has not made only South Sudan proud, by the way, by qualifying for the World Cup. It has made all of us in Africa so, so, so proud. It is through sport which unifies all of us. Whatever differences we have, whatever tribe we come from, on the pitch, we are all one. And those who follow Mandela's readings, I'm sure you would have read his one famous quote where he speaks about sports as a liberation tool. And I urge you as young South Sudanese, like Madiba was a boxer, to rally behind the national team, which is going to compete even against those countries which has imposed unnecessary sanctions on this country so that they delay your freedom to a democratic vote. We must rally behind this team and wish them all the best. Hopefully on the day when they depart, we must all be at Juba. I'd want to be there to also wish them goodbye and say, let's go and make Africa proud. Go and beat them. We want that trophy, not for South Sudan, but that trophy for Africa, because it will be a symbol of peace. Thank you so much.